Hello everyone, this is Shamsi and welcome to the next warp cell industry guide. Today we'll be talking through two different methods of scaling up warp cell production, one for personal use and one for commercial use. I have the personal use setup made here and we'll talk through that piece by piece. And for the commercially scalable warp cell production, I'm only going to talk through that. I have the ability to set it up in my pyramid there. I simply don't have the time available to keep up with the ore demands of that level of production, so I limit myself to this right here, 232 warp cells a day being made from this facility, which is basically doubled up from the production of what I have been giving out so far, which is 116 warp cells a day. And this is also the layout that's in my flowchart on the Discord. I will be remaking that and also making another one for this facility here in a little bit. I also want to thank my YouTube subs. Thank you to all of you who've been subscribing, and I also want to thank my Twitch supporters. You know who you are and you know what you did. Thank you. I'm still trying to process it all and come to terms with it, but thank you. All of you for your incredible support on Twitch, and also thank you to everyone on YouTube who has been subscribing. It is an immense help. So let's get straight into it. The first thing you'll notice that I want to talk about is the first line of production here. Raw ore into this box and pures out into this box. There's all sorts of different things you can do. You can separate out gases, you can add an extra box for each alloy, but this is simple enough for me. We technically only need 9 refiners, as the sulfur is made from our silver producer, but I have an extra refiner to make sulfur anyway for safety. And if you need extra room for storage in any of these, you can simply upgrade these containers to container hubs and link a bunch of them together. But that remains unaltered. The second thing you'll notice when we double up production from 116 to 232 is our base level production is unaltered. We still only need 1 production facility for each tier of our glass, of our plastic, and our alloys. However, what we've done differently here is we've separated out each item into its own individual box. So down here we have glass, for instance. Up here we have advanced glass, and up here we have agly reinforced glass. Now again, the transfer unit needs to pull catalyst 3 out of the tier 3 production boxes, pull it all into a relay, and the relay needs to connect back to the facilities making the tier 3. So we have our pures connected, where it's pulling its gases and its pure metals and so on, and we have catalyst 3 connected to this one that's making coag alloy. So for our catalyst 3 relay box, we have an outlink to coag alloy, polysulfide, and agly glass, so that's tier 3 of each of these, and it's pulling in from the transfer unit here below it, and that transfer unit is pulling in from the same outbox that those production facilities put their materials out into. The reason for that obviously is that this craft here, for instance for coag alloy, requires catalyst 3 and produces catalyst 3. So once you've seeded the process first with your first 3 liters of catalyst 3, the coag, the polysulfide, and the agly glass maintain themselves for their catalyst 3 needs with the help of this transfer unit. So the first thing that's different in your first level of production here is we have separated out everything into its own individual box. The next thing I want to point out is that specifically polycarbonate plastic is also separated out into its own individual secondary box. What that means is I have a transfer unit set up here, pulling polycarbonate plastic out of the main box and feeding it into the second box, because we needed more than 10 links of polycarbonate plastic. You'll notice a bunch more transfer units here. Please don't worry about them. I'll talk about what they are there for in a little bit. So our next tier of production, this is our LEDs, our basic component, and our connectors. Again, each of these have been separated out into their own container. So over here we have basic LEDs and uncommon LEDs, and we have basic connectors, uncommon connectors, and we have components now. Naturally, components only need alpha. So, oh, I don't have the recipe loaded in. Not that the recipes survive the blueprinting process, but just so we can see here, we have alpha making basic components going out into the components box, and the same basically for all of these. They're connected to what they need and they produce things into their own box. So we have glass, advanced glass making uncommon LEDs into the uncommon LED box. Now, one of these transfer units, this one here, pulls basic LEDs out of the basic LED box and basically pulls it all into this container here. Again, don't worry about it for the moment. I'll talk about it when we get to it, but then do note that you need to connect the basic LED box to a transfer unit and send that out into its own separate extra LED container. So that's the second tier of production. So we're making all three tiers of glass, plastic, and electronic alloys, so alpha, calcium reinforced copper, and coag. We are making basic components here. We're making basic and uncommon connectors, and we're making basic and uncommon LEDs. I will come back and talk about this. This is just a quirk for me. Technically, the second LED production facility, basic LEDs, is spare. It's not needed, but I'll come back and talk about why I still have it in at the end. Then for our next tier of production, you'll recall from the original warp cell facility that to maintain the extra fifth warp cell production furnace, we had to have a secondary advanced quantum core and advanced antimatter capsule production facility. In order to double up production to make 10 warp cells an hour rather than 5, we need to add a third advanced production facility in. So again, they are connected to everything they need connections to, all three tiers of glass and both tiers of connectors for the advanced capsules, advanced and basic glass and basic connectors for the uncommon, and glass and basic connector for the basic. And then over here we have plastics and LEDs, so basic LEDs and tier 2 and tier 1 plastic making uncommon, basic LEDs and tier 1 plastic making basic, and again we have all three tiers of plastic and both tiers of LEDs making advanced quantum core units. Now these send their quantum core units into the quantum core box here, and these send their antimatter capsules into the antimatter capsule box here. Now, each of these boxes connect to 10 electronic facilities each. So I've got 10 electronic facilities here making advanced quantum alignment units and sending them out into the advanced quantum alignment unit box. And I've got 10 electronics facilities here making advanced antimatter cores and sending them out into the antimatter core box. So what do I have set up here in terms of transfer units? The first transfer unit is taking basic LEDs out of the basic LED box and transferring it into the separate basic LED container, which feeds into all 10 electronics facilities making quantum alignment units. So all 10 of these are making the same item, have the same connections. So this box here can connect to 10 units maximum, and so we have these 10 units here. Then these three transfer units are pulling from each of our tier of plastics and putting them into this combined plastics box here. All plastics, as you can see. So again, we need all three tiers of plastics, and so we have a box pulling with transfer units feeding all three tiers of plastics into it. So if I were to show you, this one for instance is pulling polysulfide in from the polysulfide box and putting it out into that joint box. This one here is pulling calcite, and this one here is pulling polycarbonate. So we have the LEDs here, we have all three plastics here, and finally we have the quantum cores over here being produced by these 5 facilities here. You might need an extra uncommon quantum core unit here. I haven't included it because you really shouldn't, but I'm going to again come and talk about this at the end. There might be a reason why you would want this to have an extra unit here and an extra unit here, making the uncommon capsules and core units. So again, these 10 each have a connection to this LED box, have a connection to this combined plastic box, and a connection to this quantum core unit box. Then these 10 here are making our advanced antimatter cores. So our basic components aren't used for any other part of production. So the base container can connect to all 10 of these electronics facilities. Remember that any container can have 10 outputs going out of it and can have up to, I think, 10 coming into it. So we have our components taken care of here. What else do we need? We need our capsules, which live here. So again, 10 connections coming out of this box, going into these 10 electronics facilities here. And finally, we need our alloys, and we've simply repeated the process with a plastic. We have a transfer unit pulling an alloy out of its main box and putting it into a combined alloy box, which lives here and feeds into all 10 of these. So all 10 of these have the same recipe, have the same links, and use all 3 tiers of alloys and our capsules and a basic component to make an advanced antimatter core unit. Now, these together can make 10 advanced antimatter core units and 10 advanced quantum alignment units every 63 minutes. And that's how often these 10 warp cell production facilities can make a warp cell. Each of these 10 glass furnaces at the end that are actually making our warp cells need a connection to these 2 boxes here. And again, these 2 boxes can have 10 links going out of them. So that lines up really nicely for us. Every 63 minutes, these electronics facilities poop out 1 of each of the components that these glass furnaces need to make warp cells with. So every 63 minutes, they make a warp cell, even though it only takes, I think, 50 something minutes. 50 minutes to make a warp cell. But at once every 63 minutes is good enough for us. And that's basically the setup of the factory. Now let's talk about drain. Let's pull up dual.sh. So if we want to make 10 warp cells every 63 minutes, let's say round it down to 10 every hour, we have dual.sh here giving us, without any talents, what we're going to need per hour. So we need obviously 10 of each of these quantum alignments and antimatter core units. Those are being made from these facilities here. This is the bottleneck that's restricting our build speed to once every 63 minutes. But what do we need in the previous step of that? The first thing is we need our advanced quantum core and advanced antimatter capsules. These are made here. Let me get rid of the connections. So as you can see, we're making 1 advanced quantum core unit and 1 advanced antimatter capsule every 16 minutes. And we need 10 of them per hour. You can see in a 60-minute period, dividing it by 16, there's 3.75 of them. So in an hour, there's 3.75 crafts going on. We have 3 facilities making them. So in an hour, we're making 11.25 advanced quantum alignment units and advanced antimatter core units. That's more than 10. And so that's more or less enough for us. The next thing is our antimatter quantum cores that are uncommon, tier 2. Now I only have 1 facility set up for each of these because we're making 1 of them every 4 minutes. And again, if we were to get our calculator, there are 15 crafts of them every hour, and we only need 10 of them, so we're technically making 5 more than we need every hour. The reason you might want to have an extra one is that when I have this set up, every now and again, I would run out of the uncommon antimatter core units. I don't know whether it's like a server glitch, whether the facility stops running for some reason, for whatever reason, from time to time. But these three are making 11.25 and we need 10, and this one is making 15 an hour, we only need 10. Every now and again it stops running, so this specifically is what I noticed I was running out of from time to time when the industry got clogged up. I have no idea why, but for safety I sometimes put an extra glass furnace here, making it uncommon antimatter capsules, and 3D printer here, making uncommon quantum cores. Entirely optional and up to you. I'm not using that anymore, so I haven't noticed any issues. It should be fine. I don't know why it wasn't for me earlier. But if you're finding that it's getting clogged up and you're running out of these, do put in an extra. And then basic quantum core and antimatter capsules, we only need 30 of them an hour, and we're making 3 every 3 minutes. So again, I don't really need to do this math, but obviously there's 23 minutes in an hour, and then we're making 3 of them an hour, so we're making 60 and we only need 30. So this level of production, absolutely fine, nothing to worry about here. Going back a step, we have our uncommon LEDs and uncommon connectors. We need 20 of them per hour, and we're making 10 of them every 8 minutes, so every 16 minutes our needs are met. No issue at all for either of these. But for again, for basic components and connectors, we need 180 connectors per hour, and we are making let me load the recipe here so we can see. For our basic connectors, we're making 10 every 2 minutes. So again, we're making 300 per hour, which is way more than the 180 that we need, and roughly similar numbers for the basic components. Yeah, the same numbers. We're making a lot more than we need. Our basic LEDs, we need 280 of them per hour. Now, again, you'll see that we're making 300 basic LEDs per hour. But also, for whatever reason, I don't know why, every now and again, I don't make enough LEDs per hour. And the excess production of the extra 20 per hour wasn't enough to compensate for those drops in productivity, maybe because of server lag or delay or whatever. And I like to have an excess supply of each of these. I maintain them in much larger numbers than I need, so if something does go wrong, it'll keep working for a bit longer. The only thing you're giving up for that is extra storage space. So I would recommend for you to have a second basic LED production facility. Even though one is able to make 300 per hour and you only need 280 without any talents, I would still recommend having a second one down, just so you can have a basic supply. And also, if this is the only place in your production line that you need LEDs, should you need LEDs, for instance, to make a radar, or if you want, glowy honeycomb or whatever from time to time, you have a stockpile that you can pull out of your warp cell facility. So having an extra one here, all it takes is glass, so not a big deal to have an extra one here. And then going back to all of these, no problems here, everything is still enough. So again, for polysulfide, coag, and agly reinforced glass, we need 75 of them per hour to make 10 warp cells per hour. And then if I were to just open up one for you, you'll see that we're making 75 of them every 53 minutes. So again, pushing the upper limit, but still one facility is enough to maintain our coag alloy, polysulfide plastic, 53 minutes to make 75 liters, and our agly reinforced glass. With talents, these go up. I think I am on my crafting character here. Yeah, as you can see, it consumes less and makes more when you have talents. And then finally, to come back here let's see, what's the highest level here? So we need 150 polycalcite plastic. This is the middle one here. As you can see, we're making 75 every 11 minutes. So every 22 minutes, we're meeting our need and making a whole lot extra polycalcite plastic. And then what's the highest drain here? 525 per hour. Glass as this first one here. I don't have it loaded in. Let me quickly do that, and as you can see, we're making 75 liters every 2 minutes. So we're making 75 times 30 per hour, which is much larger than this number, so we're overproducing glass by a lot. And then again to our last level, as you can see, our highest high level drain is silver pure. We need 225 of it per hour. We're making 45 liters every 8 minutes, and we need to make 225. If I pull up my calculator, we know that in a 1 hour period, there are 7.5 crafts of this going on, and each craft nets us 45 liters. So we're making 337 liters of silver per hour. And again, this is our highest drain, and it's only 225. So we are fine with only one refiner making each of our tier 3s. For our calcium 315, I don't need to show you, you already know it's going to be fine. And again, our highest tier 1, or let's say carbon here, and as you can see, we are making 405 liters of it every 3 minutes. So every 2 minutes we are meeting our need. So as you can see, we have calculated our drain going back. Everything is perfectly aligned to be able to make 232 warp cells a day. We've calculated our need for an hourly drain, but again, remember, these facilities here make the components for a warp cell every 63 minutes, so it's not technically once every hour. Let me cut back to the inside of my pyramid to talk about the next way of scaling up production. So you'll recall in my personal industry setup guide, I advise that you separate out each item that you're making into its own production facility. So if you have that set up, you'll basically have every alloy, every plastic, every piece of glass, every LED, everything that you need to make warp cells with separated out into its own column here, which with the help of transfer units, you're able to scale up in terms of available links as much as you like. The only thing you'll have to be careful of is making sure that you're able to supply enough components in each stage of the production chain. So do you have enough refiners? Do you have enough smelters? So I know, for instance, I only have one agli reinforced glass facility here. If I wanted to double up my warp cell production here, I would have to add another one to its side to double up my production, or scale it up as much as I would need. And when you've done that, all you would need to do to double up production is to add another module of 20 electronics facilities and 10 more glass furnaces, and everything else you need to feed those earlier on in the chain. And then every time you do that moving forward, you add 232 warp cells being produced per day to your facility. So, you know, one is 232, then it's 464, then I think adding another 2 would double it up to 928 or something like that. But basically, by adding this as a module, you're able to increase your production by 232 per day. You don't have to mess around with transfer units, and again, you could simply accept that advanced quantum core units aren't that expensive to make, so making more of them than what you need isn't that big a deal. So instead of messing around trying to put the production of your quantum cores into your main industry and scale them up and use transfer units, simply add an extra 5 3D printers and an extra 5 glass furnaces, making more advanced antimatter capsules. So you basically have these, the container with the quantum cores and the container with the antimatter capsules, repeated again. So you'd have the production facility making them into extra containers that feed into 20 more electronics furnaces that feed into 10 more glass furnaces. And when you want to add another module, you simply put down another 10. And by scaling up your industry units and making sure that you're able to meet the hourly demand, let's say if you want to make 100 warp cells an hour, so this is what you'll need. You'll need to be able to make, instead of 75 agli reinforced glass, 225. So you'll need was it 3 more production facilities, maybe 4. So make sure you're able to meet with your talents, so factor that in as well on your industrial list if you have one. However many of these you can make per hour, make sure that your main facility is able to keep up with that demand. Make sure that the transfer units are able to transfer stuff quickly enough to keep up with that demand. And then simply add an extra module as often and as many times as you would like to make as many warp cells as you would like. As I've mentioned, my 232 warp cells in a day are enough for my own personal needs. I sell a few of them, I use a few of them, and I simply don't have the energy or the time to make more warp cells than that in terms of the amount of ore that would take. So this is it. I hope that you have liked this video and gained something from it. And until the next time, thank you all for watching, and bye for now.